Did Roger Hunt really deserve all the hate? For years, his talent was overlooked as fans wrongly blamed him for taking Jimmy Greaves' spot. It wasn't that simple. On top of that, his close bond with Bill Shankly only fueled criticism. Instead of being praised for his loyalty and hard work, he became an easy target for unfair judgment. Roger Hunt was one of England's finest strikers, but sadly, he didn't always get the respect he deserved. A section of England fans, especially those from the south, held a grudge against him for something that wasn't even his doing. Many believed he had replaced Jimmy Greaves in the 1966 World Cup final, which simply wasn't true. It was actually Geoff Hurst who stepped in for Greaves, but Hunt still became an easy target. The unfair criticism didn't stop there. He was even booed during some of his later England appearances, a reaction he never should have had to endure. That wasn't the only time Hunt found himself unfairly judged. There was a heated moment between him and legendary Liverpool manager Bill Shankly during an FA Cup match against Leicester City. When Hunt was substituted, frustration got the better of him, and he threw his shirt to the ground. This led to a reported heated inquest between player and manager, creating a temporary rift. Given his incredible contributions to both club and country, it's frustrating to think about how often he faced unnecessary criticism. Sadly, Hunt passed away on September 27, 2021, at the age of 83. Despite everything, he remains a legend in the eyes of those who truly appreciated his talent and dedication. Yet even now, fans still wonder, why did he face so much hate when he gave so much to the game? After all, he was one of those rare players who didn't just start his career with success, but maintain that same level of excellence right until his final playing days. Hunt's story began when Liverpool manager Phil Taylor signed him in July 1958 from Stockton Heath. It didn't take long for him to make an impact. He made his debut on September 9, 1959, in a second division match against Scunthorpe United at Anfield. That day, he also scored his first goal for the club, finding the back of the net in the 64th minute to seal a 2-0 victory for the Reds. It was just the start of what would become an incredible career. That goal was the first of many, 286 in total for Liverpool, with 244 coming in the league, a club record that stood for decades. His career could have taken a different turn when Bill Shankly replaced Taylor as Liverpool's manager. Shankly arrived with a vision and wasted no time clearing out 24 players in an effort to rebuild the squad. Hunt, however, was one of the few who survived the overhaul. Not only did he stay, but he became an essential part of Liverpool's success throughout the 1960s. His contributions were immense as Liverpool pushed for promotion, and in 1962, after years of falling just short, the team finally secured a return to the First Division. That season, Hunt was unstoppable. He played in 41 of the 42 league matches and scored a staggering 41 goals, helping Liverpool comfortably win the Second Division title by an 8-point margin over Leyton Orient. His goal-scoring prowess was on full display, as he recorded 5 hat-tricks in that campaign alone, tormenting teams like Leeds United, Walsall, Swansea Town, Bury and Middlesbrough. Once Liverpool were back in the First Division, Hunt continued to shine. In both the 1963-64 and 1965-66 seasons, Liverpool were crowned English League champions, and Hunt was their top scorer each time. In the 1963-64 season, he scored 31 goals in 41 games, and in 1965-66, he netted 29 times in 37 appearances. It was clear, when Liverpool needed goals, Hunt was the man to deliver. Beyond the league titles, Hunt also played a key role in Liverpool's historic 1965 FA Cup victory, their first ever. On the road to the final, he scored 4 goals as Liverpool defeated teams like West Bromwich Albion, Stockport County, Bolton Wanderers, Leicester City and Chelsea. When the Reds reached Wembley, they faced Leeds United in a tense showdown. After 90 minutes without a goal, Hunt broke the deadlock in the 93rd minute, putting Liverpool ahead. His strike partner, Ian St John, then sealed the victory with a second goal, securing a 2-1 win and making history for the club. Liverpool nearly added European silverware to their collection the following year, reaching the final of the 1966 Cup Winners' Cup. Hunt scored Liverpool's only goal in the final, but unfortunately they fell short in extra time, losing 2-1 to Borussia Dortmund. Still, his contributions to Liverpool's rise in the 1960s were undeniable. Hunt continued to break records. On November 7, 1967, he became Liverpool's all-time leading goalscorer, netting his 242nd goal in a European tie against TSV 1860 Munich. By the time he left Liverpool in 1969, his tally stood at 286 goals. That record stood firm until Ian Rush eventually surpassed it 23 years later. Hunt also held another incredible achievement. He was the fastest player in Liverpool history to score 100 top-flight goals, achieving the feat in just 152 games. That record remained untouched until Mohamed Salah broke it in September 2021 by a single game. After leaving Liverpool, Hunt signed with Bolton Wanderers in December 1969. He later had a brief loan spell with Hellenic FC in South Africa before retiring from professional football in 1972. His career may have ended, but his impact on the game was undeniable. In April 1972, Liverpool honoured him with a testimonial match, attended by 56,000 fans, fitting recognition for a true club legend. But his brilliance wasn't limited to club football. He was just as vital for England. His international career began when Walter Winterbottom handed him his debut on April 4, 1962, in a friendly against Austria at Wembley. He made an immediate impact, scoring in a 3-1 victory. He was later included in England's squad for the 1962 World Cup in Chile, though he didn't get the opportunity to play in the tournament. 4 years later, England had the chance to win the World Cup on home soil. Hunt, alongside his Liverpool teammates Ian Callaghan and Jerry Byrne, was named in Alf Ramsey's squad for the 1966 tournament. He started the competition partnering Tottenham's Jimmy Greaves up front. However, after Greaves suffered a leg injury, Hunt played alongside West Ham's Geoff Hurst for the rest of the tournament. He was instrumental in England's World Cup triumph. He played in all 6 matches and scored 3 crucial goals, 2 against France and 1 against Mexico in the group stage. Then came the famous final against West Germany at Wembley. England won 4-2 after extra time, and Hunt had played his part in securing the country's greatest footballing achievement. Yet, despite his role in England's success, Hunt found himself unfairly criticised by a section of England fans, particularly those from the south. Many wrongly believed that he had replaced Greaves in the final, even though it was actually Hurst who had taken Greaves' spot. The negativity eventually took its toll. In 1969, following a game against Romania, Hunt informed Ramsey that he no longer wished to be considered for England's selection. And just like that, his international career came to an end. He finished with 34 caps and 18 goals, a record that, had he continued, would likely have been even more impressive. After retiring from football, Hunt shifted his focus to his family's haulage business, Hunt Brothers, which had been running since 1929. He largely stayed out of the spotlight, but remained deeply respected among Liverpool fans. In 2000, he was awarded an MBE for his role in England's 1966 World Cup victory. Though he was never officially knighted, Liverpool supporters always referred to him as Sir Roger in recognition of his greatness. In 2006, Hunt was inducted into the English Football Hall of Fame, further cementing his legacy. That same year, Liverpool fans ranked him 13th in the club's official 100 Players Who Shook the Cop poll. Then, in 2016, he was made an honorary freeman of the Borough of Warrington, one final tribute to his contributions both on and off the pitch. He was a goal-scoring machine, a key player for both Liverpool and England, and a World Cup winner. His records, achievements, and impact on the game speak for themselves. Yet, despite everything he gave to football, he never quite got the universal recognition he deserved. Some England fans wrongly blamed him for replacing Jimmy Greaves in the 1966 World Cup final, even though it was actually Geoff Hurst who took Greaves's place. That led to boos and unfair treatment, something no player of his calibre should have faced. At Liverpool, he was a hero, but even there, moments like his disagreement with Bill Shankly added to the misunderstandings about his career. The truth is, Hunt was one of those rare players who started strong and stayed great until the very end. He never sought attention, never complained. He just played, scored, and won. Despite the criticism, real football fans know his worth. Roger Hunt was more than just a footballer. He was a legend. And legends, no matter how misunderstood, never fade away. And that wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Gary Speed's death was a tragic blow to his fans, who absolutely adored him. But what made it even more heartbreaking was the possibility that he may have taken his own life. That thought alone was almost too much to bear, leaving his supporters even more shaken. His passing wasn't just a loss, it was a tragedy that left behind more questions than answers, along with a deep, lingering sadness in the hearts of those who admired him. On November 26, 2011, Gary Speed seemed to be in great spirits when he appeared as a guest on BBC One's Football Focus. Host Dan Walker later recalled that Speed was in fine form, laughing and chatting with everyone. After the show wrapped up at 1 p.m, he hung around, catching up with other pundits at the Media City studios in Salford. Later, he met up with his old Newcastle United teammate Alan Shearer, and together they watched their former club take on Manchester United at Old Trafford, a short walk from the studios. After the match, around 5 p.m, Speed got in his car and drove home to Huntington, Cheshire, about an hour away. Everything seemed normal. But the next morning, just before 7 a.m, tragedy struck. His wife, Louise, made a heartbreaking discovery. She found Speed's body in the garage. In shock, she called an ambulance at 7:08 a.m, and the police arrived shortly after. Sadly, they confirmed what no one wanted to hear. Gary Speed was gone. Authorities didn't consider his death suspicious, but reports soon suggested that he may have taken his own life. Just hours later, the Football Association of Wales broke the devastating news to the public. An inquest into his death began on November 29, 2011, but was postponed until January 30, 2012, as people struggled to come to terms with the loss of a true football legend. The loss was a huge one because he was a player who made a real impact. His performances were so incredible that he captivated hearts that still mourn for him today. Speed's football journey began in the late 1980s when he joined Leeds United as a trainee straight after finishing school in June 1988. At the time, he was just another young hopeful working hard to prove himself. In fact, one of his early tasks as a youngster at the club was being Peter Swan's boot boy, a humble role that many young footballers took on as they climbed the ranks. But it wasn't long before his talent started to shine through. Just a few days after becoming a trainee, on June 13, 1988, Speed signed his first professional contract with Leeds, marking the start of what would become an extraordinary career. It was Leeds manager Howard Wilkinson who first spotted Speed's potential. During a youth game, Speed was playing as a left-back, and something about the way he moved on the pitch caught Wilkinson's attention. The manager saw something special in him, and soon enough, Speed was given his big break. At just 19 years old, he made his first team debut in a goalless draw against Oldham Athletic in the Football League Second Division. From that moment on, Speed proved to be an incredibly versatile player. Over the course of his career, he played in 9 of the 10 outfield positions, though he was best known for his skill on the left side of the pitch. Speed's rise at Leeds was swift. By the early 1990s, he had become a key part of the team, playing an essential role in one of the club's greatest triumphs. During the 1991-92 season, he was a constant presence on the field, playing in 41 of the 42 league games and scoring 7 goals. Leeds went on to win the Football League First Division title that season, a moment that cemented Speed's reputation as one of the best midfielders in English football. He was part of a legendary midfield quartet alongside Gordon Strachan, Gary McAllister and David Batty, a lineup that former Leeds manager Eddie Gray would later describe as one of the greatest midfields of the modern era. To top it all off, Wilkinson named Speed as Leeds Player of the Season, recognising just how vital he had been to their success. But Speed's impact at Leeds wasn't just limited to domestic football. In September 1992, he played a crucial role in Leeds' UEFA Champions League first-round match against VfB Stuttgart. After losing 3-0 in the first leg, Leeds needed something special in the return leg at Elland Road. And they delivered, winning 4-1, with Speed scoring one of the goals with a stunning left-footed volley, a goal he would later describe as the best of his career. Although Leeds initially went out on the away goals rule, they were later reinstated after Stuttgart was found to have fielded an ineligible player. His performances throughout the 1992-93 season earned him a spot in the PFA Team of the Year, further solidifying his status as one of the top midfielders in the league. Speed continued to deliver for Leeds in the following seasons, scoring crucial goals, including a dramatic last-minute winner against Notts County in the League Cup in October 1995. He also played in the 1996 League Cup final, though Leeds fell short against Aston Villa. By the time he left the club, he had made 312 appearances and scored 57 goals, leaving behind a legacy as one of Leeds' finest players. A lifelong Everton fan, Speed made a dream move to Goodison Park ahead of the 1996-97 season, joining the club for £3.5 million. He made an immediate impact, scoring on his debut against Newcastle United on August 17, 1996. A few months later, in November, he achieved a career first, scoring a hat-trick as Everton thrashed Southampton 7-1 at home. It would turn out to be the only hat-trick of his career, making it a moment to remember. By the end of the season, Speed had finished as Everton's joint top scorer alongside Duncan Ferguson with 11 goals, and his outstanding performances earned him the club's Player of the Year award. When Howard Kendall took over as Everton manager at the start of the 1997-98 season, he made Speed the club captain. However, things soon turned sour between the two. By January 1998, Speed's time at Everton was coming to an end. He played his last game for the club on January 18th, scoring in a 3-1 win over Chelsea. Then, suddenly, he was gone. He didn't even travel with the team for their next match against West Ham United. Shortly after, he was sold to Newcastle United for £5.5 million. To this day, the real reasons behind his departure remain a mystery. Speed himself gave a cryptic response when asked about it, saying, "You know why I'm leaving, but I can't explain myself publicly because it would damage the good name of Everton Football Club, and I'm not prepared to do that." Speed joined Newcastle on February 6, 1998, under manager Kenny Dalglish. He made his debut the very next day in a 1-0 home loss to West Ham. It didn't take long for him to make an impact, scoring his first goal in his 5th match, a crucial FA Cup win over Barnsley. He also played a key role in helping Newcastle reach back-to-back FA Cup finals in 1998 and 1999, though they lost both times. One of his most memorable moments in a Newcastle shirt came on September 19th, 1999, when he scored in the club's famous 8-0 win over Sheffield Wednesday, a match where Alan Shearer netted 5 goals. Speed stayed at Newcastle until 2004, making 500 Premier League appearances, a record at the time. That summer, he moved to Bolton Wanderers on a 2-year deal. Despite being in the later stages of his career, he continued to perform at a high level. In December 2006, he became the first player to reach 500 Premier League appearances. The following May, he was named first-team coach at Bolton after Sam Allardyce stepped down as manager. However, by October, he decided to step away from coaching to focus on playing again. Even as his playing days wound down, Speed continued making history. In August 2007, he scored a header against Reading, making him the only player to have scored in every Premier League season up to that point. Ryan Giggs would later match and surpass this record. In January 2008, Speed joined Sheffield United on loan, later making the move permanent. He became a key figure at the club, often serving as captain. However, in November 2008, he suffered a back injury that would ultimately end his playing career. Despite undergoing surgery, he never regained full fitness. Instead, he shifted his focus to coaching, staying with Sheffield United in a coaching role. By 2010, Speed had fully transitioned into coaching and even took part in the London Marathon to raise money for the Sir Bobby Robson Foundation, a cancer charity set up in memory of his former Newcastle manager. He completed the race in an impressive 3 hours, 49 minutes and 22 seconds. Although he had retired from playing, Speed remained registered as a player for Sheffield United and was even named on the bench for a League Cup match at the start of the following season. However, by this point his career as a professional footballer was officially over. And that's a wrap for today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Gordon Banks was anything but an ordinary player. He was the man who lost an eye and still outshone everyone on the field. Not only did he become England's #1 when it mattered most, but he also proved himself as the best goalkeeper in the world. A legend like no other, he didn't just overcome the odds, he redefined greatness. In October 1972, Banks's life changed forever when a car accident took away the sight in his right eye. For most players, that would have been the end of their career, but not for Banks. He wasn't the kind of man to back down from a challenge. Losing an eye was just another obstacle to overcome. And if there was one thing Banks did best, it was defying the odds. But this wasn't the only battle he had to fight. Years later, he was diagnosed with kidney cancer, a struggle that sadly led to his passing in 2019. Yet, despite everything life threw at him, his name had already been written into football history. The loss of his eye never stopped him from succeeding. Instead, it became part of the story that made him even greater. Banks wasn't just any goalkeeper, he was the goalkeeper. He was England's #1 when they lifted their first and only World Cup trophy in 1966. That moment alone was enough to make him a legend. But Banks didn't just ride on the glory of that victory, he was an essential part of it. England's triumph wasn't just about great attacking play, it was built on the solid foundation of Banks's presence between the posts. He was calm, reliable, and impossible to break down. And it wasn't just England that recognised his greatness. Around the world, Banks was widely regarded as the best goalkeeper of his time. This wasn't just media hype, it was backed by his performances, his countless accolades, and, most importantly, the respect he commanded from fellow players. He wasn't just good, he was consistently world-class. But even when you're at the top, people will always have questions. In 1967, after winning the World Cup, Banks made a surprising decision. He left Leicester City for Stoke City. Many eyebrows were raised. Stoke were a solid club, no doubt, but they weren't at the same level as the biggest teams in England at the time, clubs like Liverpool, Manchester United, or even Leicester themselves. For a goalkeeper of his calibre, Some wondered if he was settling for less. Was it the right move? Did it show a lack of ambition? But Banks never played for status. He played for the love of the game. He didn't need the biggest club to prove he was the best. No matter where he played, he was the best. His performances for Stoke, just like everywhere else, spoke louder than any doubts people had about his decision. He kept proving himself over and over again, not just as England's hero, but as one of football's greatest goalkeepers of all time. From his early days, he faced many challenges, especially with injuries, but he always battled through like a true champion. His journey to becoming one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time didn't start with instant success. In fact, it was full of challenges, setbacks, and moments that tested his resilience. But if there was one thing about Banks, it was that he never backed down. Back in 1953, Chesterfield scouted him while he was playing for Millspore and offered him a 6-game trial with the youth team. He did well enough to earn a part-time contract for £3 a week. At first, things weren't exactly glamorous. His reserve team was placed in the Central League, not because they were good, but because a powerful club director pulled some strings. The result? A miserable season where Banks conceded 122 goals. It would have been enough to break most young goalkeepers, but not him. During his national service, Banks was stationed in Germany with the Royal Signals and even won the Rhine Cup with his regimental team. That experience toughened him up, and after recovering from a fractured elbow, he helped Chesterfield's youth team reach the FA Youth Cup final in 1956. They lost 4-3 on aggregate to Manchester United's legendary Busby Babes, a team featuring future stars like Bobby Charlton. Banks finally got his big break in 1958 when manager Doug Livingstone handed him his first team debut against Colchester United. The game ended in a 2-2 draw, but Banks held on to the starting spot, missing just 3 games due to injury that season. The catch? There was no goalkeeping coach to guide him, so Banks had to learn everything the hard way by making mistakes and figuring out how to fix them. He quickly developed into a commanding presence, shouting instructions and organising the defence in front of him. Then came the unexpected twist. Leicester City, a First Division club, bought him for £7,000 in 1959. Banks, with barely 23 league appearances under his belt, was suddenly competing against 5 other goalkeepers, including experienced Scotland international Johnny Anderson. He started the season in the reserves, but after an injury to Dave McLaren, Banks got his chance. His debut was a 1-1 draw against Blackpool, and though he was briefly sent back to the reserves, Leicester's first-choice keepers struggled, and Banks reclaimed his spot. He made sure he wasn't giving it up again. He worked tirelessly to improve, putting in extra hours in training, something rare in an era with no specialised goalkeeping coaches. By the following season, both Anderson and McLaren had left the club, making Banks the undisputed number 1. Leicester finished 6th in 1961 and reached the FA Cup final against Tottenham, who had already won the league. Unfortunately, Leicester were forced to play with an injured right-back for most of the game and never really stood a chance, losing 2-0. The next season was disappointing, but Banks had his first taste of European football in the Cup Winners' Cup. Torn between playing for England or Leicester, he chose both, rushing from one game to another. But despite his best efforts, Leicester were knocked out by Atletico Madrid. In 1963, Leicester looked like they could win both the league and FA Cup. Banks put in one of his finest performances in the FA Cup semi-final, keeping a clean sheet despite Liverpool dominating the game. But then disaster struck. He broke his finger and missed the final few league games, and Leicester collapsed to 4th place. To make matters worse, they lost the FA Cup final 3-1 to Manchester United. Though the league form was inconsistent, Leicester found success in the League Cup, beating Stoke City in the final in 1964. Banks, however, was growing frustrated. Despite being a top goalkeeper, he was paid only £40 a week, and the club refused to give him a substantial raise. This led to unrest among the squad, and key players started leaving. By 1966, Leicester were struggling, and despite Banks winning the World Cup with England that summer, Leicester shockingly decided to replace him with a young Peter Shilton. Banks was told bluntly that his best days were behind him, and he was put on the transfer list. Many top clubs hesitated to spend big money on a goalkeeper, but Stoke City saw his value. Leicester Leicester refused to pay him a loyalty bonus, and Banks only agreed to the move after Stoke seemingly negotiated a payment. Years later, he discovered that Leicester never paid him a penny. Stoke had covered the amount. At Stoke, Banks found a team of experienced veterans who still had plenty to prove. In his early years, the club struggled, but by 1970, they were becoming competitive. Banks remained a rock at the back, making incredible saves, including one where he caught a powerful header from Wyn Davies and another where he stopped a close-range volley from Alan Gilzean. Stoke came close to an FA Cup final in both 1971 and 1972, but were heartbreakingly eliminated by Arsenal each time. In 1972, a controversial penalty and an offside goal denied them a place in the final. Banks admitted years later that he still felt cheated out of that chance. But then came a moment of glory. Stoke's 1972 League Cup win. After a dramatic semi-final win against West Ham, they faced Chelsea in the final. Banks played a crucial role, and Stoke won 2-1, securing the club's first major trophy. His incredible performances earned him the FWA Footballer of the Year award, making him the first goalkeeper to win it since Bert Trautmann in 1956. Then, in 1972, disaster struck. Driving home from a physio session, Banks was involved in a serious car accident. He suffered horrific injuries to his face and lost sight in his right eye. Doctors gave him a 50-50 chance of saving his vision, but the damage was irreversible. Without depth perception, playing professionally was impossible, and he was forced to retire in 1973. But Banks wasn't done with football. In 1977, he made a surprise comeback, playing in the North American Soccer League for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. At 39 years old and with one working eye, he was still so good that he was named NASL Goalkeeper of the Year. He also had a brief spell in Ireland, playing one game for St Patrick's Athletic and keeping a clean sheet. Banks finally retired from playing in 1978, but his legacy was already secured. His journey from a young goalkeeper conceding 122 goals in a season to becoming a World Cup winner, League Cup champion, and one of the best shot stoppers football has ever seen was nothing short of extraordinary. He faced rejection, financial struggles, career-threatening injuries, and even blindness. But he never stopped fighting, and that's why he remains one of the most inspiring figures in football history. And that wraps up today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an update. It's heartbreaking when someone's greatest love also becomes their downfall. Denis Law gave everything to football, pouring his heart and soul into the game. But the sport he loved so much took a heavy toll on him. Years of heading the ball led to repeated head injuries, pulling him into the cruel grip of dementia, which eventually took his life. Still, Denis Law is far from forgotten. The moments he gave us, the joy, the brilliance, those still live on. He gave everything to football, but the game he loved so deeply also played a role in his struggles later in life. Diagnosed with Alzheimer's and vascular dementia, these illnesses became a significant part of his final years. Instead of staying silent, Law and his family worked tirelessly to raise awareness, shedding light on the potential risks that footballers, especially those who headed the ball frequently, could face. He spoke openly about the possible connection between repeated head impacts and dementia, believing that it played a role in his condition. Sadly, on January 17, 2025, he passed away due to these illnesses. But while his life came to an end, his legacy will never fade. Law wasn't just a footballer, he was an icon. He gave the football world moments that few, if any, could ever replicate. His nickname, The King, wasn't something handed to him without reason. He earned it, game after game, with his dazzling performances, his ability to turn matches on their heads, and the way he completely captivated the Old Trafford crowd. He was a showman, not just a scorer, making sure that every time he stepped onto the pitch, fans got more than just a game. They got a spectacle. His passion was unmatched, his hunger for success undeniable. Beyond club football, Law's Scottish roots were a huge part of who he was. He didn't just play for Scotland, he represented them with pride, embodying everything it meant to be a Scottish footballer. His fiery spirit, his determination, and his sheer will to win made him a national icon. His deep connection to Scotland only added added to his unique appeal, especially within the UK, where his name carried weight far beyond club rivalries. And of course, you can't talk about Law without mentioning what he did for Manchester United. He arrived at Old Trafford at a time when the club was trying to rebuild after the devastating Munich air disaster. Under the legendary Matt Busby, United was in a period of transition, and Law became one of the key figures in their resurgence. He wasn't just a great player, he was a symbol of their revival. His goals, leadership, and sheer brilliance helped United claim 2 league titles and the European Cup, cementing his status as one of the club's greatest ever players. When United needed someone to lift them back to glory, Law was there to do it. But his career had its fair share of drama. One of the biggest moments came in the early 1960s when he was playing for Manchester City. An Italian club, Torino, came calling with an offer, and what happened next sent shockwaves through the football world. Without Manchester City's permission, he signed a pre-contract agreement with Torino, a massive breach of his contract. Naturally, Manchester City was furious. They refused to release him at first, even threatening legal action against both Law and Torino. What followed was a messy, drawn-out dispute that involved complex international transfer regulations of the time. Eventually, a transfer fee was agreed upon, and Law moved to Italy, but the whole ordeal left behind a storm of controversy. But throughout his career, one thing that truly set him apart was not just his incredible skill, but the way he kept everyone invested in the game, making every match exciting to watch. His career began in a very unique way. He started as a skinny, bespectacled 14-year-old who didn't look like a footballer at all. When he showed up for a trial at Huddersfield Town, the manager took one look at him and called him a freak, saying he had never seen a player less suited for the game. But Law proved him wrong, big time. Despite his small frame, Huddersfield signed him on April 3rd, 1955, and that was the beginning of a legendary career. Law's early years at Huddersfield weren't always easy, but one significant event changed everything for him. He had an operation to correct his squint, which massively boosted his confidence. Soon, he was making waves in the football world. When Huddersfield was relegated to the second division, it actually worked in Law's favour. The club needed fresh talent, and at just 16 years old, he made his debut on December 24th, 1956, in a 2-1 win over Notts County. His talent didn't go unnoticed. Manchester United's legendary manager, Matt Busby, saw something special in him and immediately tried to sign him for £10,000. At the time, that was a huge sum for a teenage player, but Huddersfield refused to let him go. Bill Shankly, who was managing Huddersfield at the time, was also a huge fan of Law's skills. When he left to manage Liverpool, he wanted to take Law with him, but Liverpool simply couldn't afford the young star. Instead, in March 1960, Manchester City swooped in and signed Law for a British record fee of £55,000. Busby tried once again to bring him to United, but City got there first. Joining Manchester City was a big step for Law, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. The club had barely avoided relegation, and Law even thought Huddersfield had a better squad at the time, but he got off to a good start, scoring in his debut match against Leeds United. His impact became even clearer in April 1961, when he netted 2 goals in a 4-1 win over Aston Villa, helping City stay in the first division. Despite his growing reputation, Law had his doubts about staying at City. He was playing well, but the team wasn't competing at the highest level. Then came an unforgettable FA Cup match against Luton Town, where Law scored an incredible 6 goals. It should have been a dream moment, but the match was abandoned due to bad weather, meaning his goals didn't count. To make matters worse, City lost the replay, and Law's efforts were all in vain. By the summer of 1961, Law was ready for a new challenge, and that's when he moved to Italy to join Torino for a British record transfer fee of £110,000. Moving abroad was a huge change for the young Scotsman, and while the luxurious pre-season training in the Alps was a pleasant surprise, the reality of playing in Italy was much tougher. The defensive style of football, known as catenaccio, meant attackers had few chances to score, and Law found himself struggling. He was used to the fast-paced attacking football of England, but in Italy, defenders were brutal, and chances were rare. His time in Italy also had its fair share of drama. One of the most bizarre incidents came when he was sent off in a match against Napoli. Afterward, he found out that Torino's coach had actually told the referee to send him off just because he was angry at him. That was the final straw. Law was ready to leave, and Torino agreed to sell him. At first, he was told he was going to Juventus, but he had no interest in playing for them. So instead of agreeing to the move, he simply flew back to Aberdeen, knowing that Torino wouldn't get a transfer fee if he refused to play. Eventually, on July 10, 1962, he got his wish. He signed for Manchester United for another record-breaking fee of £115,000. Back in Manchester, but this time at Old Trafford, Law quickly showed why United had been chasing him for so long. In his first match, he scored after just 7 minutes, and although United struggled with form that season, Law was a shining light. He was an out-and-out goal scorer, but also a player who could entertain the crowd. He played with flair, confidence, and passion, making him a favourite among United fans. In the 1963 FA Cup final, he played a crucial role in United's victory, scoring the opening goal in a 3-1 win over Leicester City. That same season, he set a club record by scoring 46 goals in all competitions, a record that still stands today. His performances earned him the prestigious Ballon d'Or in 1964, making him the best player in Europe. Over the next few seasons, Law continued to be United's talisman. He helped them win the league in 1965 and 1967, but injuries started to take their toll. A knee injury suffered while playing for Scotland in 1965 would haunt him for the rest of his career. Despite his struggles, he remained a key player for United. When United won the European Cup in 1968, it should have been a crowning moment for Law, but he missed the final due to his knee problems. He had to watch from the sidelines as his teammates lifted the trophy. The injury continued to trouble him, and although he kept playing, he wasn't the same dominant force he once was. By the early 1970s, things were changing at United. The club was no longer the powerhouse it had been, and Law was no longer at his peak. In 1973, new manager Tommy Docherty made a tough decision. He let Law go. After 11 incredible years at the club, scoring 237 goals in 404 games, Law was given a free transfer, but his career wasn't over yet. Manchester City welcomed him back, and he scored twice on his return debut. However, his most famous moment in a City shirt came in his final season. On April 27, 1974, in a Manchester derby, Law scored a back-heel goal that helped City beat United 1-0. What he didn't realise at that moment was that United was already doomed to relegation, but thinking he had sent his old club down, Law refused to celebrate and walked off the pitch with his head down. That was his last major moment in professional football. Knowing his time at the top was over, he retired in 1974, leaving behind a great legacy. That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss out on future updates. See you next time. Terry Venables' shocking business secrets got exposed, uncovering a web of corruption that stunned everyone. As more details came to light, the scandal spiraled out of control, landing him in serious trouble. The fallout was unavoidable, and in the end he was disqualified, marking a dramatic downfall for the once respected figure. Venables found himself under a lot of scrutiny because of his business ventures. He got caught up in investigations about questionable financial activities. He was the focus of investigations related to allegations of improper financial conduct, which certainly raised some eyebrows. One of the biggest stories came from his time at Tottenham Hotspur, where he faced investigations over some questionable deals and decisions that didn't sit well with many. His time co-owning Tottenham with Alan Sugar was also far from smooth. The relationship between the two was tense from the start, with constant disagreements. Eventually, it all fell apart, and both sides ended up accusing each other of wrongdoing. It was a messy fallout that caused a lot of drama. On top of all that, Venables faced serious consequences for his business mistakes. He was disqualified from acting as a company director for 7 years because of how poorly he managed several companies. All of these issues really overshadowed his achievements in football and added a lot of unwanted drama to his career. But this wasn't the end. Throughout his career, Venables became entangled in several major controversies, many of which overshadowed his accomplishments in football. One of the most talked about allegations was that he paid a bung to Brian Clough, who was the legendary manager of Nottingham Forest. This claim wasn't just a passing rumour. It was something that stirred up a lot of questions about Venables' business practices and ethics. If true, It would have been a major breach of the rules in the football world, and it added even more complexity to his already troubled career. But the troubles didn't stop there. Venables also found himself in a long-running and very public dispute with the BBC, specifically with their investigative programme Panorama. The programme made some pretty serious allegations about him, suggesting that he had been involved in some questionable activities during his career. These accusations were serious enough to make headlines and spark a lot of discussions in the media. Venables, of course, didn't take kindly to these allegations, and a fierce battle followed as he tried to clear his name and defend himself against what he saw as unfair attacks. The combination of these accusations about the Bung and the Panorama investigation only added fuel to the fire of the controversies surrounding him. Instead of just being known for his footballing skills, Venables was now just as much in the headlines for the drama and the disputes. His public image took a real hit, and it became harder for him to shake off these negative stories. It was a tough situation for someone who had once been highly regarded in the football world, and it left a lasting impact on how he was viewed by the public. Venables showed his football talent from a very young age. When he was 13, his parents moved to run a pub in Romford, Essex, so Venables went to live with his grandparents, who encouraged his passion for football. His skills developed quickly, and he moved from playing for his county team to representing England's schoolboys. This caught the eye of several big clubs, including Chelsea, Tottenham Hotspur, West Ham United, and Manchester United. In 1958, at just 15 years old, Venables left school and signed as an apprentice with Chelsea. He later explained that he chose Chelsea because he felt he had a better chance of breaking into the first team there. The club also offered his father a part-time scouting job, which helped his decision. Venables denied claims by West Ham's youth coach, Malcolm Allison, who suggested he joined Chelsea purely for financial reasons. Venables initially delayed becoming a professional player to try out for the Great Britain squad for the 1960 Summer Olympics. When he found out he wouldn't be selected, he turned professional. Shortly after, he helped Chelsea win the FA Youth Cup in 2 consecutive seasons, defeating Preston North End in 1960 and Everton in 1961. His senior debut came in February 1960 in a 4-2 loss to West Ham, with newspapers already calling him the new Duncan Edwards. In 1961, Tommy Docherty joined Chelsea as a player coach and eventually replaced Ted Drake as manager. Docherty became a key figure in Venables' career, especially for promoting younger players like him, known as Docherty's Diamonds. However, their relationship wasn't without tension. Venables felt that Docherty lacked tactical depth, and the two often disagreed. In 1962, Chelsea was relegated, but they bounced back the following season, finishing second and gaining promotion. Venables also helped Chelsea finish 5th in the First Division in 1963-64. By 24, Venables earned his FA coaching badges, passing with distinction. Venables had a successful time at Chelsea, winning the League Cup and scoring a penalty against Leicester City in the 2-legged final. Chelsea also made it to the semi-finals of the FA Cup in 1964-65, but they were knocked out by Liverpool. Toward the end of the 1965-66 season, Venables and 7 other players broke curfew after a game, which led to all of them being suspended for the rest of the season. Venables was upset with Docherty's punishment, calling it crass, stupid and self-defeating. This led to his move away from Chelsea. In 1966, Venables was transferred to Tottenham Hotspur for £80,000. He made his debut in a 1-0 victory over Blackburn Rovers, but soon made headlines by punching club legend Dave Mackay during training. Despite this, no long-term issues arose. That season, Spurs finished 3rd in the league and won the FA Cup, beating Chelsea 2-1 in the final. Venables had placed a £25 bet on Chelsea to win, which would have paid out £500 if they had lost. the same amount he received as a bonus for winning. However, Venables didn't have a great relationship with Spurs manager Bill Nicholson. He felt Nicholson's negative attitude drained his enthusiasm, and he didn't feel appreciated by the fans. In 1969, Venables was sold to Queen's Park Rangers for £70,000, a move he later said changed his life. At QPR, he played for a few seasons, and under manager Gordon Jago, the team progressed, earning promotion to the First Division in 1972-73. In 1974, Venables signed with Crystal Palace, but retired due to knee arthritis later that year. Manager Malcolm Allison gave him a coaching role, and, in 1976, he briefly played for St Patrick's Athletic in Ireland before officially ending his playing career. Venables earned 2 international caps and became the only player to represent England at every level: schoolboy, youth, amateur, under-23 and full international. He was also named by Alf Ramsey as one of 33 players considered for the 1966 World Cup, but didn't make the final squad of 22. Venables had quite the eventful career, both on and off the field. In 1975-76, he worked as a coach under Malcolm Allison at Crystal Palace, helping the team reach the FA Cup semi-finals. As Palace's new manager, Terry Venables quickly built a youthful, energetic squad, often promoting players from the youth team and making free transfers. The media dubbed them the team of the 80s. One of his first big moves was selling winger Peter Taylor to Tottenham for £200,000, with most of the money going to balance the club's finances. Venables also invested £1,500 of his own money to sign striker Rachid Harkouk from Feltham, agreeing to receive half of any future transfer fee for the player. By March 1977, Palace had enough funds to purchase Jeff Bourne from Derby County for £30,000. Bourne's 9 goals in 15 games helped Palace secure 3rd place in the Second Division and earn promotion. Venables' team quickly adapted to life in the Second Division, finishing 9th in the 1977-78 season. The next year, they won the league title, gaining promotion to the First Division. Their final day victory over Burnley, after all their rivals had completed their fixtures, allowed them to clinch the title and deny Brighton and Hove Albion their highest ever achievement. In their first season in the top flight, Palace briefly topped the league in September 1979 but finished 13th by season's end. However, the following season, things took a turn. Expensive signings didn't work out, and by October 1980, Palace found themselves at the bottom of the league. With attendance dropping and financial struggles mounting, Venables left for Queen's Park Rangers in the Second Division, and Palace were relegated that same season. At QPR, he found success, leading them to First Division promotion as champions in 1983. He also guided them to the FA Cup final in 1982, although they lost to Tottenham in a replay. Venables later moved to Barcelona, where he won the Spanish League title in 1985 and reached the European Cup final in 1986. Though they lost to Steaua Bucuresti in a penalty shootout. Venables returned to England in 1987 to manage Tottenham, winning the FA Cup in 1991. He also had a stint as England's head coach from 1994 to 1996, taking them to the semi-finals of Euro '96. Throughout his career, he was known for his strong bond with players, giving them freedom off the pitch and defending them in the media. And that wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.